Everybody, this is the Caban, which will some stories from the last territories. In this special edition, we're going to be looking at some of the most iconic places where Capital Sports Promotions since 1973 held their wrestling cards. We're going to go back in a tour of nostalgia to see some of the most famous matches that were held in those places, those iconic places that we're going to be looking in this video. So sit back, relax, and enjoy our look back at some of the most iconic places that wrestling was held in the island of Puerto Rico during the territory era. One of the questions that always get asked is, what are some of the places where wrestling in Puerto Rico was the hotbed? Well, we're behind one of them, the Palacio de Recreación y Deportes in Mayagüez. And this place, every Sunday, for the most part, Capital Sports Promotions will run a big event in the west coast of Puerto Rico. Some of the highlights of this place has been Anniversary 87, where TNT, better known in the United States as Savio Vega, faced Mr. Pogo in the main event of that card with over 9,500 people in attendance. This is also the place where the Great War, our version in English of the War Games, happened here in Puerto Rico, and at the end of 1987, in the battle between the Chiquistar Army and the Justice Army of Carlos Colon. In that match, the Iron Chick helped the Rule Breakers defeat Carlos Colon and his army and set up a great feud between the Iron Chick and Carlos Colon in 1988. So this is one of the big places that we're going to be visiting while we spend some time here in Puerto Rico. In the city of Bayamón, just outside the train, we see the two stadiums that became the two of the most used buildings in the golden years of Capital Sports Promotion. El Juan Ramón Lubriel Stadium y el Rubén Rodríguez Coliseum de Bayamón. Starting with the Juan Ramón Lubriel Stadium that was built back in 1973 with a capacity of 12,500 people, this institution became a mainstay of professional wrestling in the island. The first card of record, according to historian Matt Farmer, happened on March 1 of 1975. It was in this place that the Vaqueros Locos, or los Vaqueros del Mal, or the Crazy Cowboys, a tag team formed by Dutch Mantell and Cowboy Frankie Lane, starting their record run of 10 sold-outs in a row in a feud against Carlos Colon, Jose Rivera, and newly babyface Huracán Castillo Padre, who went from being one of the biggest heels in the island to one of the biggest babyface when he came to the rescue of Jose Rivera once he was attacked by the Vaqueros Locos. Juan Ramón Lubriel was also the place where Carlos Colon finished his story and became, after a year and a half, the Universal Heavyweight Champion, for 1.5 years chasing Ric Flair to unify both World Wrestling Council and the NWA World Heavyweight title. The rematch of the century, the battle between Bruiser Brody and Stan Hansen against Carlos Colon and Abdullah the Butcher, also was held in Juan Ramón Lubriel Stadium in a match that literally was fought all over the stadium, in the bathrooms, in the locker room, everywhere they could fight. Those four guys went all over the place in this stadium. And who can forget maybe the greatest match in anniversary history, the hair versus retirement match between Invader 1 versus Chiquistar in front of almost 40,000 people in attendance in 3 stadiums at the same time. Sadly, it's in this stadium that wrestling history changed forever, especially in Puerto Rico, when on June 16, 1988, Bruiser Brody was killed in the locker room of this stadium. Wrestlers like Ric Flair, Harley Race, Terry Funk, and many, many more also wrestled in this historical place. Next to the Juan Ramón Lubriel Stadium is el Coliseo Rubén Rodríguez, the Rubén Rodríguez Coliseum, that opened back in 1988, also with a capacity of close to 12,000 people. From its opening, it became a mainstay in the territory. Even to this day, it was a host of a couple famous anniversaries in the late 80s and early 90s, including possibly the most famous match that has happened in Capital Sports Promotion and that has been seen around the world. The fire match between Hércules Ayala versus Carlos Colon that has influenced many other ones around the world. He was also the host of the final battle, the battle between Carlos Colon versus Sadistic Steve Strong in a loser leaves town that to this day is well remembered in the island by the fans. The stadium is still being used for big events by both main companies in the island, especially the World Wrestling Council, what was known as Capital Sports Promotion, that still runs their anniversary shows in this Coliseum, including the last meeting between Carlos Colon versus Ric Flair back in Anniversary 49, when the two legends faced each other for one last time. We continue our look through iconic places of wrestling in Puerto Rico, and we are in the Pedro Rodriguez Gallá de Cataño. Why is this building so important? Well, every Wednesday night, TV tapings were held here. This was where Capital Sports Promotion will record their TV shows and then transmit them Saturday, Sunday, and internationally across the United States. Well, in some parts of the United States, of course. Here, we have some great and memorable angles. The Massacre of Cataño, where the Club Deportivo de Chiquistar, led by Chiquistar, Hércules Ayala, and Ron Star, massacred Invader 1, Invader 2, and Carlos Colon. This was also the place where Manny Fernandez jumped on Invader 3, and Invader 3 starts spilling blood all over the place, and to this day, many people wonder, was it real? Was it fake? Was there magic on it? What happened that night? Well, it was held here in Cataño. This was also the place where TNT, on one occasion, put the Cobra Clutch on Carlos Colon and would not wake him up, leading to some of the greatest announcements by Joaquin Padini of, "Ay bendito, Carlos is gonna die." Well, every Wednesday night, the TV tapings were held here in Cataño and then shown across the world through the Capital Sports Promotions TV show. In the south of Puerto Rico, you cannot talk about pro wrestling without talking about El Auditorio Pachín Vicente de Ponce. Built back in 1972, with an original capacity of 7,200, it was the Capital Sports Promotion mainstay for big cards on Friday night in the island of Puerto Rico. Since opening, it was used by various promotions around that time in the 70s, and the first again that we have records of that Capital Sports used was on the date of June 29, 1977, in a battle between Gorilla Monsoon versus Ernie Ladd. There has also been some very historic matches in this beautiful auditorium. The first one was June 30 of 1978, when Michel Martel passed away in this stadium after winning a tag team match with Pierre Martel, better known as Frenchy Martin in the WWE, against the tag teams of Carlos Colon and Invader 1, when after the match, Martel fell sick and sadly passed away. This tragic story was used to start possibly one of the bloodiest and most legendary feuds in the island of Puerto Rico. The Martel family of Pierre, Daniel, and even Rick Martel coming to the island to exact revenge against Invader 1, who was blamed for the death of Michel after he hit him with a hard punch in that match. In a feud that, to this day, for old school fans, is rated in the top 5 feuds in the island of Puerto Rico. It was here that possibly the card with the biggest names in professional wrestling, 6 former world champions, happened here in Pachín Vicente de Ponce for Anniversary 86, a tournament to crown a new Universal Heavyweight Champion, a title that was declared vacant when Abdullah the Butcher threw ammonia into Carlos Colon's eyes. That tournament had former NWA Heavyweight Champion, the Giant Baba, former Universal Heavyweight Champion and World Heavyweight Champion Abdullah the Butcher, former AWA Heavyweight Champion Rick Martel, former NWA Heavyweight Champion Terry Funk, former NWA Heavyweight Champion Barry Windham, and former Universal Heavyweight Champion Carlos Colon, battling in the first round of that tournament, with possibly the best match of the tournament being held in El Pachín Vicente, the Terry Funk versus Barry Windham match. But that was not only the great match that happened that night, as also in the undercard, Ron Starr defeated Invader 1 in a wild brawl to win the World Wrestling Council television title. That to many fans of that era was the best match of that night. The only time I visited the auditorium was on Anniversary 87, which was being held in 3 different stadiums, with 40,000 fans watching it live and in closed circuit. And that's where the place where my heart as a fan was broken for the first time when Carlos Colon defeated my favorite rule breaker in that time, Hercules Ayala, in the main event to recapture the Universal Heavyweight title in a match as good or better than the Fire match. To this day, it has been sporadically used for cars, but it has become too expensive to run when you consider the low attendance that occurs today in pro wrestling in Puerto Rico. Pachín Vicente remained one of those special places to watch wrestling during the golden era. The Irán Bison Stadium, built back in 1972, and with a capacity of 18,000 to 40,000 people, depending on the event and the circumstances that the event is going to be held, was where Capital Sports used to hold their biggest events. Hall of Famers like Gorilla Monsoon, Andre the Giant, Ric Flair, Harley Race, the Briscoe Brothers, Rowdy Roddy Piper, Abdullah the Butcher, Ernie Ladd, and many others made this stadium their home base when they were in Puerto Rico. The first recorded show in this stadium, even when we are sure there were many before this one happened, was on December 17 of 1977, when the tag team of the Hollywood Blondes, Larry Sharp and Jack Evans, defeated the tag team of Carlos Colon and Jose Rivera for the North American tag team titles, starting the golden period of wrestling in the island. Seeing all these seats and seeing the stadium, it could take us back to those golden years of Capital Sports Promotion. We are here in Irán Bison Stadium, the house of the biggest events of Capital Sports Promotion across its history. There's a couple of them that we can talk about here. For example, October 16 of 1982, Carlos Colon was defending his WWC World Heavyweight Champion against then NWA World Heavyweight Champion Ric Flair. The stands were packed, they were full. Not only do we have that match, but we also have Anniversary 84 with more than 32,000 people. So what was thought impossible, Carlos Colon and Abdullah the Butcher being a tag team for the first time against the squad of Bruce Brody and Stan Hansen. Vengeance in the Afternoon, the single greatest match in the history of Puerto Rico in tickets sold. More than 32,000 filled the stadium to see Carlos Colon gain revenge on Abdullah the Butcher once he threw ammonia in his eyes. Across the 70s and 80s, this was the place where the biggest and greatest cards were held in the history of Puerto Rico. More than 40 Hall of Famers came through these gates and wrestled in that field at one time or another in the 70s and the 80s in Puerto Rico. We are outside the Coliseum, the Roberto Clemente Coliseum, one of the most iconic, if not the most iconic place to watch professional wrestling in Puerto Rico. Why do I say that? Well, since its opening in 1972, this place right here rent cards not only by Capital Sports Promotion, but also by Florida Championship Wrestling under the LNG Promotions. In this place, we saw some of the greatest NWA World Title matches. For example, Jack Briscoe versus Dory Funk versus Harley Race, and many, many other battles under the branch of the LNG Promotions. Once Capital Sports Promotion won the war in 1979, it became part, a mainstay of Puerto Rico wrestling. Every year, Capital Sports Promotion will hold their 3 Kings Day card in this place every year. One of the first one and most remembered one was the one where Carlos Colon challenged Harley Race for the NWA World Title. And the first time that the NWA World Heavyweight Championship was defended under the Capital Sports Promotion banner. In that match, Carlos Colon was on the verge of victory when, surprise, surprise, Dutch Mantel, dressed as a Santa Claus, came in and attacked Carlos Colon. Not only that, but this place also was the site of one of the most famous matches in the history of wrestling. A match that has run around the world, the Stan Hansen versus Carlos Colon bull rope match. It was also here where Chiqui Star finally turned on Invader 1, becoming the biggest rule breaker in the history of Puerto Rico. If there's a place where walls could talk and they would bring a great history of wrestling in Puerto Rico, it would be the Coliseum of Roberto Clemente, or the Roberto Clemente Coliseum. And the last stop in our mini documentary of the most iconic places of pro wrestling in Puerto Rico is La Cancha Bajo Techo de Caguas. Here, Capital Sports Promotion will hold three cars every month, and then they will have the big show in one of the big arenas like Irán Bison, Roberto Clemente, or Pachín Vicente that we have already talked in this documentary. Here, you saw a who's who of professional wrestling, from Harley Race to Bruiser Brody to Hercules Ayala. In this arena, we were able to see the first fire match in the history of Puerto Rico, Vikingo versus Invader 1. We also saw Hercules Ayala versus Bruiser Brody, TNT versus Carlos Colon, and many battles since the 1970s that Capital Sports Promotion started using La Cancha Bajo Techo de Caguas for the regularly house shows. They continued to do that through the 70s to the 80s into the 90s. Sadly, thanks to Huracán Maria, the Cancha Bajo Techo suffered a lot of damage, and there are plans in 2025 and 2026 for it to be remodeled so that it can become what it was once, the hotbed of professional wrestling. Memphis had the Mid-South Coliseum. Mid-South had the New Orleans Auditorium. Capital Sports Promotion had La Cancha Bajo Techo de Caguas. And with that, we finish our mini documentary looking at the arenas of Capital Sports Promotion during the golden years of that promotion. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed a look at them, and it will help you guys visualize them and picture them when we start talking about them in other feuds that we're going to be talking about in the next couple of weeks. If you like them, please share with your friends, and please let them know so they can know a little bit more about Capital Sports Promotions and where some of the greatest matches in the history of that promotion were held in one time or another one. Into next week, when we come back with another episode of Stories from the Last Territory. This is your friend Luis Cuevas the Caveman saying goodbye or sayonara, amigos.